Lots of things wobbling around on the screen, and I don't know if we're going or not. But anyway, hello and welcome, fellow sovereigns. And buenos dias, bom dia, good morning. What else is there? Ni hao, konnichiwa, atamarie. See, we can all speak other languages, even if it's just little snippets of other countries' languages. However, apart from other country languages, there's a whole range of other realms of language. And one of those realms, if you like, is emotional languages. And so there's some people can speak those languages and some have no idea. And I'm told that teenage girls develop their emotional language up by about 15 years old, whereas boys can take 30 years to learn those sort of the emotional language, and sometimes a lot more. So I've just got three stories because a lot of people are trying to convince other people to think their way, to believe what they believe. And there's all this stuff about people being woke, and that some people say it's a great thing, some say it's terrible. Some people talk about others being awake and aware of what's going on. And sometimes we're just wasting our breath, because the kind of language that I know may not be the language that you know. And it doesn't matter how many words, how many images, how many symbols, how many descriptions I use, some people are not going to get it. And if we can start to understand that we all have several, perhaps many realms of language, and some we understand intimately and very cleverly, and others just over our heads, we just don't get it. So I'll give you three examples, as I said, two from 2 days ago and one from many days ago. So 2 days ago I went to my doctor to get what's called in Australia a health plan, I think it's called, or a care plan. So they allow you 5 visits to other practitioners, but it's got to be signed by a doctor. And so I had problems with my knees, and I wanted my doctor to give me a plan, if you like, so that I could get 5 free sessions at a chiropractor. And he didn't want to do it. Why? Because he said, a chiropractor works on your back. What's that got to do with your knees? And it surprised me because he's Chinese, and I thought he would understand the meridians and how everything's connected, and, push this part of my foot and that fixes my liver, and push another part of my foot and that helps my spleen or whatever. But his world, his language, let's say, is that every part is separate. So if we want to fix my hearing, we go here. Whereas another practitioner might deal in the spine, and that connects to the hearing. Or somebody else might go to my feet, and that can help my hearing. And I understand that. That's my language. I understand how the body is one, and every part is connected to every other part. And I realized in that moment that despite his extensive medical learning and his Chinese background, he doesn't speak that language. He cannot see that someone working on my spine can help my knees. Just didn't get it. So I didn't explain. I didn't try and explain how the system works, because I just got it that he was not going to get it. And all I could do is just insist, and eventually he just did this, poor stupid Philip, okay, I'll sign a chiropractic thing for his knees. And the reason that I didn't press my point or try and explain the system that I know is because of something that happened probably 30 years ago, I think. And I'll tell you about that third. So that's the number one little instance where I just shut my mouth because I knew I could not explain myself. We come from different planets. We come from different countries in terms of perception of the world, which means we come from a different language. And he can't speak my language, and I can't speak all of his. So after that doctor, I then went to a naturopath because I've got an operation coming up and I just want to get myself in, good health, and so recovery, all that stuff. And she, I told her about the thing with the doctor, and she kind of chuckled and said, well, she has exactly the same thing because as a naturopath, she understands that diet has an effect on the body, whereas doctors don't. Doctors do not learn about nutrition and diet and all of that. Put anything you like in your body. And so when she goes along to her doctor, perhaps when she's got her daughter there and wanting the doctor to prescribe something for her daughter, she and her doctor are talking a different language, and she gets angry because the doctor can't see what she can see. That she's asking the doctor for a particular remedy or something that he can provide through the system she can get it through him free. He won't give it to her because he can't see that this particular practitioner or whatever will help her daughter's thing. So, and then she gets home and she tells her husband, and he said, well, it's your fault. It's your fault that you're angry, because you know the doctor does not understand your language, and so you know he's not going to get it. So why try and press him into something he cannot get? Stop trying to force someone to learn a language they don't know. It's like, I don't know, a Spaniard who can't speak English and me trying to speak in English and going on and yelling at him louder and louder in English, and he's going, no higher. And it doesn't matter how loud I talk in English, that Spaniard's not going to hear or not going to know what I mean. I perhaps could use sign language and stuff like that, and they might understand. And it's like me talking to my doctor. The more I try and talk to him, it's like me trying to yell at him in Spanish, if he's Chinese and doesn't understand Spanish. And the same with my naturopath. The more she tries to convince her doctor that her system's wrong and hers works, again, it's like her yelling at the doctor in Mongolian, and he can't speak Mongolian. And the louder she talks, the more bizarre it gets. And as her husband said, it's her fault. Stop trying to talk to someone in a language they are not going to understand. Let it go. Just let it go. We're not all going to end up speaking the same language. It's just not going to happen. We've all got such different backgrounds and different perceptions and different whatevers. And the third one, I may have told this story before, I'm not sure. So probably 30 years ago, I went to a men's weekend workshop in New Zealand, in Auckland. And it was amazing. It was transforming, and I just saw a whole lot of myself that I hadn't seen before. I was able to release a whole lot of things, and through the process of the workshop, I mean, I had been doing stuff anyway, so I had learnt some emotional language, let's say. And then at one point in the workshop, we were asked to write a letter to our fathers. Now, some of these guys were absolutely, they wanted to kill their fathers. They just wanted to shoot the bastards and kill come out with the knives, and they hated their fathers, and they just were ranting and raving and punching pillows and yelling. And so when it came to writing these letters, some of them were just vile. I hate you, you whatever. all that stuff. But I found myself not being able to do that. I ended up writing, I suppose it was like a poem to my father, basically saying I love you and I'd like to know you better. What were your dreams? What were your aspirations when you were young? What disappointments have you had? What dreams didn't happen? What gets you up in the morning? Who are you inside? And I just want to know who you are and what drives you and what disappoints you and all that sort of stuff. And I wrote this beautiful. I mean, I've still got it somewhere. I might even turn it into a song one day. Who knows? So I wrote this beautiful poem. And I had this really strong feeling I wanted to send it to my father. But I was terrified of his reaction, so I held on to it for several months. I thought, I'd really love to send this to Dad, and just, we could just hug and just have a chat and get to know each other on a deeper level. So eventually I thought, well, okay, the world's not going to collapse. I'll send this to my father. Heart in hand. I don't know why I was so terrified. He lived quite a long way away. So I posted it to him and waited for his reaction. And I waited. And I waited. And I waited. And nothing happened. So over the intervening couple of months, I had spoken to him on the phone. And it was always about what he was doing and what are you doing and da-da-da, the weather and the bloody politicians and the outside world was his domain. And so those are the kind of conversations we had. And that was what I was used to with my father. And it's what I was used to for myself until I started doing the work, as Byron Katie would call it. So eventually I dragged up the courage, and one of these conversations on the phone, I said to him, Dad, about 2 months ago I sent you a letter. Oh yeah, I said, what did you think of it? Oh, that, he said. That, yeah, he said, I'm not sure if you spelt that particular word right. And he said, your grammar, he said, that syntax, he said, the third line could have come after the fifth line. And I thought, hang on, this is a love letter to my father, and he's talking about syntax. And I said, but what did you think of what I said? Well, he said, yes, it would have been better if you'd rhymed those every second line, and I'm not sure about spelling, and he was pinching grammar. He said, you use commas a lot. And the penny dropped. I realised, with great disappointment, that there was a language that I'd learnt. The language of emotions, the language of soul, the language of spirit, the inner language. I had learnt that language. I was fluent in it. And when I was with the men because after the workshop we met regularly, every 2 weeks I think it was, we spoke that language. But my father had not learnt it. And he could not respond to the poem in the way that it was written to him. His world was the outside world. And he was very eloquent with words. He was a very good speaker, and he was very good with grammar and all that sort of stuff. That's what he knew. So he spoke that language. He spoke the language that he knew. So he was speaking English, if you like, and I was speaking Spanish. He'd never learnt Spanish. I'd sent a poem to him in Spanish, and he didn't get the meaning. And it took a couple of days of, sort of like, it would have been so nice. It would have been just so nice to have met my father on that same plane, on that same language. And I realised it's not good or bad. That's who he is. My father speaks this language, and there are other languages that he speaks I don't understand when he gets technical about his work and all of that sort of stuff. But he did not speak the language of emotion. And these two doctors, my doctor 2 days ago and my naturopath's doctor, they don't speak the language of unity, of connection of body and how our system all works. They can't speak that language. They have learned a language of medicine, how this is a nose and this is an eye and this is an ear and this is a tummy button and this is a knee and this is a foot, and they're all separate. And if I want to fix my knee, I go to the knee and fix it. If I want to fix my nose, I go to the nose and fix it. That's their language. But the language of therapists in general is, whether it's a chiropractor or a, what's the foot one? Aromatherapy, whatever. It's a different language of meridians and connection and all of that. So my naturopath's husband was correct that it's her fault for being angry to expect her doctor to speak her language. You know him. Just let him be in his own world speaking his language. And so when we're trying to convince people of our political correctness, if you like, that we're right and they're wrong and all the rest of it, we need to realize that some people will not get it. We come from our language base, and it might be that we've done particular work in certain areas, and people talk about the sovereign and the straw man and all of that stuff that I've heard it a dozen times. It's a bit like my brother. I think 3 times he's a mechanic, and about 3 times he's explained to me exactly how a car motor works. Yeah, that goes to there and that goes to there and this does that and that. It doesn't compute. If I turn the key and it goes, yep. If it doesn't, I get a mechanic. So I don't understand the language of mechanics. Some people understand the language of economics. Some people understand the language of all of this new, let's say, sovereignty, straw man, flags, and was it admiralty law and other law. And I've had it explained a dozen times, and it kind of doesn't really go in. So we need to realize that some people are just not going to get it. And it doesn't mean they're right and we're wrong, or we're right and they're wrong. We just all speak different languages. And instead of getting angry, as my naturopath did, and she's learnt not to now, we can just sigh and think, yeah, it'd be nice if we could connect. Whoever it is we're trying to connect with. But sometimes we're just not, it's not going to happen. We just have to sigh and know that the languages that we've learnt are the languages that some other people have learnt, but many, many people will never learn. They have no interest in learning. I actually have no interest in learning how a car works, which is probably a big factor in why I don't understand it. I just can't apply my thought system to it. I've got other things to do. So we can get angry and frustrated and sigh and go on about how other people aren't awake or are not woke or whatever label we want to use for others' apparent ignorance. They're not ignorant. They're very eloquent, they're very intelligent in their sphere. And we're eloquent and intelligent in our sphere, and our spheres may never meet. It's like planets circling. They're never going to crash. We hope planets don't crash. No, planets go together. So we can circle and orbit people, but we may never meet in the middle. It's just what happens. Sigh and let them go. sayonara, poppy-san, ciao, and all that. Kakati, I know. We speak the other language, and that's it. So what do I wish you? I guess I wish you the awareness that perhaps nobody, will speak the exact language that you do. And we all have to moderate the way we speak and try and step into another's moccasins and go, so they speak that language, so maybe we need to try and speak their language rather than yelling louder in our language. It's kind of exactly what's going on. So I wish you the patience and the acceptance that your language may not be the language of other people. And that's just how it is. We can let them go. We can try. They don't get it. They don't get it. Other people will. And so I wish you the peace of that little bit of enlightenment. And you may not have got it because I'm speaking a different language. But if you did get that, then I hope it brings a little peace. And I bless you and all who sail in her.